The Boston Celtics are going through rough times. Derrick White is having one of the worst seasons of his career. Jaylen Brown is starting to come back down to earth. And Jayson Tatum, after all the talk, he might not return this year.
The Celtics are sending Drew Holiday to Portland for Anthony Simons and 2 second-round draft picks.
Breaking news out of the association surrounding the Boston Celtics.
The Celtics have traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks.
50 for Jaylen Brown. This is Pritchard time. The crowd can sense it. Over 3 Bulls. Great in and out dribble. Oh! He set off the smoke detector.
Welcome, everyone, to the Your Celtics Source podcast, coming to you on a cold Thursday morning in January, the day after the Celtics got just boat raced by the Atlanta Hawks to start the first quarter, and then it was a close game from there on out, but the Celtics really never had a chance after that start to the game, and very much a revenge game for the Atlanta Hawks after their 30-point loss to the Celtics in Atlanta just a couple of games ago. But that being said, this game sort of falls under the many games over the last couple of weeks where the Celtics have just struggled offensively, defensively at some points, but mostly just offensively. They did have a couple of okay wins in there against the Brooklyn Nets, where it took double overtime, and against the Portland Trailblazers, but the Trailblazers were without their best offensive player, arguably an all-star, in Danny Avdija. And we have to talk about the struggles that Derrick White is having, that Payton Pritchard is having, and now Jaylen Brown is starting to have. But that's all underneath the giant umbrella covering the Celtics season, and that is Jayson Tatum. And before we talk about Jayson Tatum, I will just ask that you please like and subscribe, follow on social media, check out this podcast and all podcasts on YouTube or in audio format on your favorite podcasting app, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Please give a rating and a comment. That really is appreciated. But now, without further ado, we have to start with Jayson Tatum. And we all came into this season, you and I both, the media, the fans, saying, will he return this year? That was the question after suffering his Achilles injury so late into the playoffs. And then we saw the workouts earlier in the year, in October, November, and we saw the footage of him doing that full workout just a couple weeks ago. And the question changed from will he return to when will he return? And I think we all had some date in either early March or maybe late February around his birthday. I think they played the Charlotte Hornets at home. That would be a great game to introduce him, although the Hornets are playing well, but who knows? In a month's time, will that still be the case? But now, with Jayson Tatum's recent comments, it's up in air whether he will return this year. And there are two directions to go with this, right? Obviously, the first is, if he's not physically cleared or he's not mentally ready to go, he should just sit out the entire season without question. Because, arguably, the mental side matters more than the medical side of it. Obviously, if he's still injured, physically, he will not play. That's a no-brainer. At this point, he probably is almost back to what his physical state will be, right? Going on, 9, 10, 11, 12 months, it sort of tables out how much healthier he can get physically. But the mental side could never come back. He could never be the same mentally. And that is something that he has to get right before he considered playing. We saw Halliburton just a couple of games ago refused to go back to OKC, even though he's not playing, he's out for the season. He refused to even go back with the team for that sort of NBA Finals rematch because he was just traumatized by the situation, right? And Jayson Tatum doesn't seem like that because he is traveling with the team and, he is with them on all flights, including back to New York. Obviously, he didn't injure it in New York. He injured it. Did he injure it in New York? Yes, he did injure it in New York. But he did go back when the Knicks and the Celtics have faced off. But these comments from him on the Pivot podcast the other day, where he said he doesn't know whether he should show up. And I think, there's multiple reasons why he might not want to play. One is the Celtics, as of this entire season overall, have been playing some really great basketball without him, with Jaylen Brown as the number one option, and he doesn't want to just disrupt what the team has sort of built around him, the camaraderie of everyone on this team, the culture, which he's definitely a part of, but he's not the main sort of focus. And the Celtics have sort of, adopted a little bit of a different style. They have kept it open, the same style, so that when Jayson Tatum comes back, he can fit right in. But having Jaylen Brown as the number one option is very different than Jayson Tatum as the number one option. And, he says he wonders how he will fit in after 50 plus 60, somewhere in there, games into the season, which is, around when he might come back. My guess it'll be around 60 if he does come back. But that being said, right, he would then have to get some touches on the ball, which would take away from what Jaylen Brown is doing. And will he be able to take an offense that is single-handedly carried by Jaylen Brown and fit in without disrupting what Jaylen Brown can do? And we've seen in the past, it's been a lot of your turn, my turn. And the Celtics did win a championship that way, but it came with Jayson Tatum, having some shooting struggles in the playoffs for sure, and Jaylen Brown winning Finals MVP, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He was the main reason for their success. Unarguable that Jaylen Brown won, not single-handedly, but, put the most contribution in to that NBA Finals championship run, right? And, I think it'd be great for him to come back this year, knock off some rust, especially because of where the Celtics are in the sort of scheme of the NBA, right? They're second in the Eastern Conference. They only lost by 1 to the Detroit Pistons just a couple of games ago. And that being said, the Pistons have one glaring weakness, which is their three-point shooting and their shooting in general. And if you bring back Jayson Tatum, not only is your defense going to improve, your offense is going to take a massive step forward, and I think you could beat the Detroit Pistons without making a move at the trade deadline. Now, it would be nice to go out there and get a center. We talked about that the other day. But that being said, even if you don't do anything, even if you stay pat and you just get the biggest addition anyone is going to get, maybe besides the Giannis trade, of Jayson Tatum coming back, right? And that could just take your team from, a second round exit to arguably the NBA championship. And I don't think the Celtics would win this year. I think the winner will be one of 3 teams out of the Western Conference, maybe one of 4 teams in the Thunder, Spurs, Rockets, Nuggets. But that being said, even a run to the NBA Finals when this was supposed to be sort of a step back gap year, not a full tank year, right? They decided that early on with how good this team was, but they never expected this team to be where they are right now. And I think it puts ownership and Brad Stevens' management in a tough situation in terms of what they do at the trade deadline. But that's another side. The side with Jayson Tatum is, does he want to come back? Does he want to disrupt what Jaylen Brown has going? Because I'm not sure he does. I think he actually would rather sit down and just watch and see how this team goes in the playoffs without him, because I don't think it's a good, not that it's a bad relationship between Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, and I think it's a great relationship actually, but I think there is a little bit of a sort of fist fight between who gets the ball when they're both on the court. And if it's this year, I want to see Jaylen Brown bringing the ball up. And even if he's getting Jayson Tatum involved, that's the way I want to see it. And I think they would be better than in the previous years if Jaylen Brown's handling the ball. But is Jayson Tatum ready to allow that? And I don't think he is. I think that's why he's considering staying out, because I don't think he's, emotionally ready to accept the sort of second, sort of 1B role on this team this year. And he would definitely have to be that to start. But even, after 20 games in, to start the playoffs, can the Celtics and Jayson Tatum accept that style of play? And as of right now, I think no. That's why Jayson Tatum is so, mixed in his feelings on whether to return. And we have to wait and see. I still think it is more than likely that he returns. But, I'm going to wrap up this segment here just by stating that, by no means is his decision to come back or not reflective on his, basically his physical readiness. It's all going to be the mental side and whether he believes he can fit in with Jaylen Brown in the system that the Celtics are playing right now. Alright, I want to turn my attention away from Jayson Tatum to the guys actually on the court. Because over the last 5 to 6 games now, the Celtics are in a horrific offensive slump. And yes, they have some okay wins in there against the Trailblazers and the double overtime game against the Brooklyn Nets. But for the most part, they have just not been able to generate consistent offense. And that was highlighted last night in their loss to the Atlanta Hawks, losing 117-106, as I had mentioned at the top of the show. Really was not much of a game after that first quarter. They were down by as much of 23 points, and I think it ended with 21-point lead for the Hawks, or something like that. Very much a bad day at the offense for the Celtics, but a revenge game for the Hawks after the Celtics sort of boat raced them in Atlanta just a couple weeks ago. But there's two sort of main reasons why the Celtics are losing these games. And I'm going to get to the more important one, in my opinion, second, but I will just start with the turnovers. The Celtics have been one of the best teams at not turning the ball over, not giving another team just free opportunities to score transition points in a quick and just easy manner, right? But in this game, the 16 turnovers lead to 23 points for the Atlanta Hawks. The Celtics, that's been one of the biggest problems in this stretch right now. It's the fact that they're not generating consistent offense. They're not even getting shots off, let alone missing them, because they're not getting the opportunity to generate an offensive possession because they're having these sloppy turnovers. Sloppy turnovers from Derrick White. He had 9 turnovers in that game against the Trailblazers, and, he looked okay offensively, but when one thing is going well, one thing isn't going well for Derrick White, and we'll talk about him later on. But that was just one example. An example in this game, just sloppy execution and really a miscommunication when Garza is sort of going to, do a screen assist for, I think it was Payton Pritchard, maybe it was Derrick White in this game, and he tries to hand it off to Derrick White coming around the screen, and basically he just hands the ball to Dyson Daniels, or I think it was Dyson Daniels, maybe it was Johnson, who got the steal, but he basically just hands it to him on a platter in this game for the guy to go down and score a transition dunk on the other end, right? Just really stupid, ball handling skills from Garza, from White, from, in that possession, basically taking a great opportunity for a wide open shot and just handing the ball to the other team. So that was a big problem, and that definitely sort of, led to just a runaway game for the Atlanta Hawks when it seemed like they were getting the game back under control. They were still down around 11 points at that time, and that game just got out of hand quickly in the fourth quarter. It was already a big ask for the Celtics to come back, but then that possession right there sort of sealed the deal for the Atlanta Hawks, and Joe Mazzulla takes out his starters sort of quickly after that, even though that wasn't arguably a starter's fault. That was very much a Luka Garza fault on that play. But that being said, the biggest problem right now is the three-point shooting, and it's as a team. It's not just Derrick White. It's not just Jaylen Brown. Sam Hauser has come back down to earth as of lately, but they shot 9 of 34 in this game, 26%. It's their 5th worst shooting night of the season. They've lost all 5 of their worst three-point shooting nights, and I think they're 2-7 when they shoot under 30% from 3, and that's understandable. That makes sense. Right? Meanwhile, the Hawks go 18 of 42, 43%. At one point, they were like 18 of 36. I think they missed a lot of threes to close the game, but at some point they were very much at a 50% throughout the night. And I think there's a defensive issue in how the Celtics are guarding perimeter shooters. They're trying to protect the paint. They are sort of late to contest shots in the corner. They are sort of often living with these above the break threes from guys that historically have under 35% 3-point shooting percentages on the season. But that being said, right, the overhelping, guys are sort of trying to double. They're trying to sprint and double one guy, and then they pass it and they go sprint and double another guy. But the ball moves too quickly. There are guys that are getting wide open shots with not even a defender within 6 feet to make a contest on a shot. The Celtics have to stop doubling. They have to just live with the switches. Ugo Gonzalez, Baylor Shireman in particular, you could see it last night. The way they were just leaving guys open to come around and double a guy like Johnson, who was their main offensive guy on the night. Right, Corey Kispert, after he got hot in that first quarter, the Celtics doubled him a lot and left guys like Okongwu wide open. Okongwu, matter of fact, actually went down with just a brutal, looked like he broke a tooth maybe, pulled a tooth, something, when Jaylen Brown elbowed him in the face on his offensive possession. Very similar to Derrick White's situation. In fact, the footage of it, I'll show a picture right here. It's pretty gruesome injury right there. He could be out a couple days, and maybe he'll go see Derrick White's dentist. But that being said, right, just leaving guys wide open that maybe are not the greatest three-point shooters, but when you leave a guy wide open, more often than not they're gonna make the shot because that it's just shooting practice for them, and they have all the confidence in the world. Maybe the confidence of a chip on the shoulder that you're gonna leave a guy like that wide open. We're gonna get into some of the players' performances in this game in just a second, but I will just sort of wrap this part up by saying that the defense is one of the biggest problems right now, but it's the offense for the Celtics that is the biggest problem. It is the inability for Derrick White, Jaylen Brown to consistently hit shots. The inability for them to even get an offensive shot off with the turnovers that they're creating. Derrick White in particular. I think I mentioned it, but if not, right, he had the 9 turnovers in one game, right? That's very unlike Derrick White. And to be honest, I'm not sure what the Celtics can do about it because it's really been all season, especially for Derrick White. And Derrick White could really use a Jayson Tatum to come back. That's one of the reasons I actually want Jayson Tatum to come back, for many reasons, obviously. But Derrick White would get a huge boost from what Jayson Tatum can do for Derrick White in particular. But in this game, right, Jaylen Brown, 27 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 9 of 20 shooting. So, it's okay, but he's 0 of 5 from 3, right? In this game, the Hawks made 9 more threes than the Celtics did, right? Celtics went 9 of 34. The Hawks went 18 of 42. And so that's 27 points on just 3-pointers that the Hawks outscored the Celtics on. And yet, it's only a 15-point lead for most of the night, right? So, that being said, right, they were already at a just giant disadvantage to begin with, right? And yet, they're still trying to claw their way back, right? The Celtics have to do a better job of making threes and preventing threes, unlike what they have done over the last, 5, 6, 7 games, right? And as I was saying, Jaylen Brown, right, he was a minus 24 in net rating in this game. He didn't play well, but, he looked sluggish. He hasn't had a game off. He could really use a night off. But with Derrick White shooting the way he is, with Payton Pritchard shooting the way he is, I don't know if you can give Jaylen Brown a night off right now. Payton Pritchard, a minus 30 on the night, 0 of 3 from 3. Derrick White, 1 of 5 from 3. Combined with Pritchard, 1 of 8 from 3, right? Amari Williams, he struggled. Played 10 minutes. They sort of benched him until garbage time halfway through the game. He made some just brutal mistakes offensively. Some of his screens, right, he's getting called on sort of illegal screens. He sort of goes positive, makes a positive impact on one play, and then he makes a negative, play on the other end. And I know we've been talking really well about Amari Williams over the last couple of days, but this is a game where, as I had mentioned, right, he's probably going to take a step back as teams start to adjust him, and it's going to take a while for him to get back into the comfort zone of a guy like Joe Mazzulla. In this game, Dyson Daniels had a huge impact, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, 5 steals, right? A lot of those, the self-inflicted mistakes from the Boston Celtics. Luka Garza, he played okay, made a couple of nice offensive rebounds, putbacks, but him and Keita continue to struggle defensively, especially guarding guys out on the perimeter. Amari Williams, the Celtics have a big center problem that is going to have to change if they want to even contend for a championship this year. And I think Jayson Tatum couldn't fix that if he comes back. But that being said, you still probably want to go out there and get a center at the trade deadline. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up this podcast here. We're going to keep it pretty short. This afternoon, actually, probably after this video comes out, actually, we are going live to do a full Patriots Seahawks preview, so make sure to check that out on YouTube. We're going to talk about Bill Belichick and his snub, but we're also going to do a full breakdown, position by position, player by player preview for that game coming up in just over a week. But with that being said, please like and subscribe, follow on social media. As I said, you can check out this podcast wherever you get your podcast. We will be back sometime next week. We're not going to have any instant reactions for games, at least the Kings game and the game on Sunday, I believe. Actually, we might have an instant reaction for that game. So we won't do an instant reaction for the Kings game as I am going skiing this weekend. But after that, we will be back to our normal schedule with instant reactions after every game, podcast episodes after every 3 games. So, until next time, go Celtics.